Who you gonna call? Well, not the Target I found these at, because I bought them all! That's right, friends! Today we get to take a look at the first wave in Hasbro's new Plasma series of Ghostbusters figures. Everyone's out of the package here, and of course we get the four-man Ghostbusters, Peter Venkman and Ray Stantz, Egon Spengler, Winston Zeddemore over there, Dana Barrett while she's possessed by Zuul in that cool red dress she wore, and Gozer herself. Alright, we're going to start taking a look at the sculpt of the four-man Ghostbusters first, since they reuse a lot of each other's parts, and then the female figures right after. So here are the four main Ghostbusters, and they mostly share the same body with two exceptions. Ray's got a different torso, and Venkman has different lower legs, and that's because if you'll notice, Venkman doesn't tuck his pants into his boots like all the other Ghostbusters, and if you think that's kind of weird, well, Bill Murray's a weird guy, and he actually did that in the movie for some reason. Ray's actor, Dan Aykroyd's also a little pudgier, I guess, than all the other actors. I mean, he didn't seem that much pudgier in the movie, but I guess in the cartoon he was a lot fatter, so they had to do that to sort of fit with people's imagination. But yeah, he's got a different torso piece, so he can have a little bigger belly, and because of that, he seems like a little bit smaller than the other Ghostbusters in terms of height. I guess he had to make up for it with his belly fat there. So really the standard body is shared between Egon and Winston in terms of having the same lower legs with the pants tucked into the boots like they should be on the standard uniform Venkman and normal torso. Just in general, the bodies have these baggy looks to them. Look at the folds sculpted in there. That's really nice. The boots have the laces sculpted on and they look really nice. Not too much to say about the sculpt on the body, really. Got those elbow pads to help hide the double elbows. That's good. The belts are separate floating pieces, and they kind of hide this articulation in the waist that we'll get to when we talk about articulation. All the little gizmos are sculpted pretty accurately to the film. And this tube thing should be a little lower on the leg like it was in the film, but I guess Hasbro moved it up just a little bit so it wouldn't interfere with articulation. That's good. Each Ghostbuster also has a very good face sculpt. We'll zoom in on Venkman there, and yeah, it looks a little bit stylized, but for the most part, that definitely looks like Bill Murray. I think they did a good job on that sculpt. Ray pretty much looks like Dan Aykroyd. No complaints there on the face sculpt. I think the likeness on Harold Ramis is really good here, and then I think Hasbro made the right call not sculpting any lenses in the glasses there. That just looks really great. I love the eyebrows in particular, how they just arch just a little bit. Man, that's so Harold Ramis, and that's so how Egon looked in the movie. It's great. Winston, for whatever reason, is the only Ghostbuster sculpted with a smile on his face. I mean, I don't remember Ernie Hudson being like the happy-go-lucky Ghostbuster in the movie. He was kind of more like the working stiff kind of guy, but yeah, it does look like Ernie Hudson. Moving on to the female figures, they each have a unique sculpt. This is Dana while she's possessed by Zuul, and yep, that face looks like Sigourney Weaver, the actress who played her, and the hair is sculpted in this frizzy, big hair 80s fashion that she had in that movie. The dress has lots of folds in it, like it's billowing in the wind, which it always seemed to do in Ghostbusters. It didn't really have this break in it for the arm, but that's just for the sake of articulation. And she's got bare feet. No real issues with the sculpt on Dana. Next up, Gozer in the movie was played by Slavica Jovan, and the face looks pretty much how she looked in the movie. I mean, I don't really know what she looks like outside the movie, because this is a lot of makeup and stuff, but I mean, yeah, it's got that weird 80s androgynous haircut, and then the weird bubbles on Gozer's costume all over the place, and I mean, they're not perfect, but for the most part, these bubbles are where they're supposed to be, except on the heels, which, I mean, the heels are supposed to have this bubble, and then the heels are supposed to be actually heels, but they filled those in for stability purposes, I assume, and that's a good change, I think. Really, the only complaint I have with the bubbles is, over here, this cluster on her right shoulder is supposed to be a lot bigger and a lot more intricate, kind of how they're all clustered on the back here, and like this giant blob kind of thing. That's supposed to be how it is over here, but I mean, for the most part, I don't have much complaints with the sculpt. It's very intricate. There's all kinds of texture in the body. Not bad, Hasbro. Moving on to the paint, however, I think there are some issues. The first one being the main four Ghostbusters uniforms are just way too bright. Like, I mean, I guess it's technically a shade of gray, but it looks almost white, and the Ghostbusters costumes are supposed to be a bit darker than this, I think. They're supposed to be a lot grimier, too. Like, if they had a slime-covered wash, I think they'd come out perfect. But beyond that, each Ghostbuster has a little decal for their name tag, and it's, for the most part, pretty clean. Like, there's Venkman's there, very easy to read. Same with Ray's tag that says Stantz. Egon's got Spengler, that looks good. And Winston's last name, Zeddemore, is very clean, even has the second E, which even the credits to the first Ghostbusters movie forgot. Each Ghostbuster also has the little No Ghost logo on the right shoulder, and for the most part, it's pretty clean decal given the scale, but I mean, I think it's really missing something, like an outline on the red logo outside, like how his hands have it, would have been really nice to make it look crisper, I think. The boots and the gloves on each Ghostbuster are done in this like slightly glossy black paint. It's not overly glossy. I kind of like that. It's got a good little look to it. The belts on the Ghostbusters are molded in gray, and all the little gadgets and gizmos are painted black. It's pretty clean for the most part. The little holes that latch up the belts should be like painted black and silver in some parts, but like, I mean, nobody cares about those little details. And now that I'm looking at this tube, it was like a transparent yellow in the movie, and like what are you carrying in these tubes, Ghostbusters, that are attached like right over there? What in the heck? Biggest problem with the paint, however, has to be these elbow pads on the back, which are black, but they're supposed to be gray. I mean, they got the gray going on the front part of the pads over here, but I mean, that's just completely inaccurate for them to be black. That's not true to the movie. But for the most part, the paint on the Ghostbusters themselves is pretty good. There's no real quality control issues. I just think they're too bright in general. The paint on Dana's also pretty good for the most part. She's got that digital face print technology, just like the Ghostbusters, which came out pretty fine, and her eyes are painted red, which, I mean, her eyes didn't glow the entire time she was possessed by Azul, but she definitely did it a few times, so I mean, that's kind of cool. The paint on the dress is this sort of dull metallic red, which is pretty close to the movie. I mean, it was this kind of shiny red, a little transparent dress, so that works. But on the underside, it was a really like reflective gold with like just a little greenish tint, and instead Hasbro was like, well, we'll just make it all green. I mean, this is kind of close to the color, but it's certainly not shiny or reflective at all. And then last inaccuracy is this the gold. I mean, it's green on the figure, but it's supposed to be like goldish and reflective in the movie. The strap around the waist. It did not continue to her right. It actually only went to the left, and then there were like red straps on the right in the movie, so that's pretty inaccurate, but I mean, not a big deal overall. For the most part, the paint's pretty good quality on this, just, you know, not quite accurate on that sash right there. Now, Gozer's probably the big disappointment in terms of paint. Now, her face looks fine. It's got a little black speck there, and the Gozer even had sort of a mole on that part of her face in the movie, so it makes me wonder if it's intentional, but I mean, hair's the correct color, and those big red eyes, and the overuse of makeup. I mean, even Dana kind of had that. What's with the Ghostbusters girls in the movies, like using so much makeup? But I mean, the problem with the paint on Gozer is the body. All these bubbles are supposed to be silver. It could really use like a silver wash or something. Instead, everything's just molded in the dull pink color. I mean, it's like slightly shiny. I don't know if that's just because it's like sort of glossy paint they used to mold it in, but I mean, it's not accurate to the film. There's supposed to be tons of hues of silver and purple and pink in here, and they're just completely absent. But I mean, I don't know what Hasbro could have done for the bubbles that are sort of like see-through and transparent. Like, they couldn't have really done that, but I mean, they could have done something with silver. Overall, paint on these guys is pretty good in terms of quality. Really, Gozer's the big disappointment on the body, and the Ghostbusters could be a little bit darker. Moving on to articulation, all the Ghostbusters have the same body and they have the same articulation, so let's get them out of here and basically just look at Venkman and then the two female figures. So Venkman has a ball joint head, can look so far up, so far down, gets pretty good side to side, and goes all the way around. Each Ghostbuster has hinged shoulders, go so far up, and butterfly joints get a little bit of range. I mean, they're really small, so it's kind of impressive range for the size of the joints that are there. And the arms go all the way around, of course, cuts at the bicep that kind of swivel with the shoulder when it's pulled out like that. Double elbows at the elbow pads, so the design lends themselves well to that. And then they all got hinge and swivel wrists that hinge laterally. Both hands hinge laterally. I guess that's for holding the proton packs a little bit better. And they swivel all the way around, of course. They all also have this sort of double ball peg hidden right under the belts to give them a torso joint. Gets sort of left and right motion, and pretty good forward and back, considering it's just one joint and they don't have an ab crunch. Goes all the way around also, of course. Ball joints at the hips can do the splits so far, come so far forward, and pretty good back. There are cuts at the tops of the thighs and double knees. The little one's a little stiff. Let's bend it, and yep, can even kick his own butt. That's really good. And then the ankles are on hinge and pivot Marvel Legends styles. It's a little hard to see with Venkman's cuffs hanging so lower. Let's grab Ray over here, and yep, you can see it's got pretty good range, gets really good side to side. There are no cuts at the tops of the boots or the gloves on any of them. Dana has a ball joint head, gets so far back, the hair kind of limits it, and then gets pretty good forward thanks to a hinge, which the male Ghostbusters figures didn't even get, and some decent side to side, can go all the way around in spite of that hair. These shoulders are on hinge and swivel. It goes so far up, all the way around. There's no bicep joint, but she has a single elbow with a swivel in it. Can't quite get to 90 because of the sculpt of that dress part there, but that's all right. Wrists hinge normally instead of how the Ghostbusters do it laterally, and they swivel all the way around. Diaphragm joint on the female figures is much higher up, gets really good side to side. pretty good back and forth, even better than the Ghostbusters did. That's nice. And then up in the dress, she's got hips that are on ball joints. They can, well, this one can go so far forward. The other one's kind of limited by the dress and then how far back you go. I mean, you can't really go far back at all. This big rubbery dress is in the way. But they do have cuts at the thighs in there, and then double knees, which, I mean, you can bend this one, but this one, again, the rubber of the dress is kind of in the way, but you can bend them pretty far if you push past that. And then finally, hinge and pivot, Marvel Legends style ankles for her tiny little feet there. Gozer also has a ball joint head on a hinge, gets really far range, much farther than Dana, because she doesn't have a big cone of hair holding her back. Also goes that far down. Excellent side to side right there. Hinge at the shoulder goes so far up, that's well above 90, that's excellent. Goes all the way around too, of course. Single hinged elbow that also swivels, very nice. And hinge and swivel wrists, also hinged vertically, just like Dana's was. But she's doing better than Dana on the torso, because she gets a traditional diaphragm joint that gets pretty good side to side, pretty good front and back when you combine it with that ab joint that Dana was missing, and wow, that's really good flexible. Come think of it, the Ghostbusters, the male Ghostbusters didn't have ab joints either, so on terms of the head and the torso, so far, Gozer is getting the best articulation out of everyone. Hips are on ball joints again, do the splits so far, come so far forward, so far back, no dress to get in the way, thighs have cuts, double knees, can kick her own butt, very good, that's great range there, and hinge and pivot, Marvel Legends style ankles on top of her heels, which, you know, should not be filled in, but they filled them in for stability, so that's nice, and they get really far side to side swivel too. Overall, I think Gozer kind of wins in the articulation department, but everyone has probably the best articulation possible. Not bad, Hasbro. So everyone's packaging was pretty much the same on that side there. They'll get nothing pretty much, except some of them are missing this little attention caution advertisement. Other side, you get these stylized portraits of Winston, Ray, Egon, and Peter, which strangely enough is even on the girl figures. It would have been nice if you had character-specific art on the sides so we can tell them apart on the pegs easier, Hasbro. On the back, everybody gets a little bio in this box. Here's one for Peter, Ray Stantz, Egon Spengler, Winston Zeddemore, Dana Barrett, and Gozer, just in case you want to read those. Down below that, we get the little advertisement for the Build-A-Ghost. I guess it's not Build-A-Figure, and which part goes from which figure. And then over here are these weird little CGI renderings of the figures. I mean, like, look at the hip joints there. Those are the figures, not the characters. And then why are they, like, CGI? I mean, I guess maybe these are the files they printed these from in the computer? I don't know. And then whichever figure you're looking at, this one happens to be Gozer, is kind of highlighted like a video game select screen or something. That's neat. And down here is just a bunch of boring gobbledygook. Up front, every figure has the Ghostbusters logo in this little corner and this little zipper design here that continues up to the top. And then they get their name tag down here, whatever name's on their actual name tag on the figure up there, or just their last name if they don't have a name tag, or just their name if they don't have any other names. Also worth noting, the bubbles aren't really like glued in. Like the tray inserts are just like very loose on the top and the side here. You can just like kind of push them around, and like, gosh, if you were in the store, like you could get, look how much you can get your finger in these packages without even opening them. It's kind of weird. Anyways, everyone's the same, so let's just open up Venkman here. We'll cut some tape at the top. This zipper is non-functional, by the way. Oh, it just slid out pretty easily. And we can get a pretty cool look at the insert art. It's just this red sort of schematics of the Ecto-1 and the Proton Pack. Looks nice. Actually, see, it's got a really cool color scheme going with that package once the tray and the figure out of the way. And speaking of the tray, there are two of them, and I gotta say, this is looking kind of nice, Hasbro, because, like a Japanese import figure or something, just this little protective plastic tray just slides off, and then I don't see any twist ties. It's kind of in there tightly. Let's just pop everything out. Wow, so they're really in there tightly, but overall the packaging's pretty nice, I'd say, with that collector-friendly tray. And the packaging is pretty collector-friendly in general, friends. I mean, you gotta cut tape, but no twist ties. And then if you look at the size of it, first of all, it's very boxy, which makes it easy to stack, but it's like the same exact height as their Power Rangers Lightning series, and it's a little bit thicker, but in general, it's a bit more collector-friendly than, like, say, Marvel Legends, even though it's the same height. It doesn't have, like, this, you know, punch-out card and the angular thing that makes it difficult to stack. Pretty good packaging overall, Hasbro. I like it. Moving on to accessories now. Each Ghostbuster, of course, comes with a Proton Pack. Peter comes with the Ghost Trap. Ray comes with these Ecto Goggles. Egon with a PKE meter. Winston gets the Proton Stream for his Proton Pack. Then Gozer has the alternate lightning hands. And then everyone, of course, comes with a piece of the Build-A-Ghost, the Vince Clortho Louis Tully Terror Dog thingy. Venkman gets the right hind leg, Ray comes with the left forepaw, Egon the left hind leg, Winston the right forepaw. All this in spite of the fact that I think the packaging says Venkman's supposed to come with the left forepaw, or even if it's the left hind leg, he comes with the right hind leg, so I don't know. The Ghostbusters come with the forelegs, that's all you really need to know. Gozer gets Vince's head, and Dana gets the body, and that's all that she comes with. Well, anyways, let's get these out of here and start building that Build-A-Ghost. Well, friends, here's our 7th figure for the wave. You can tell it's Vince Clortho instead of Zool, because Vince Clortho has the longer horns, I guess, because he's the male terror dog. And gotta say, I'm really loving the look and the size of this guy. I mean, doesn't have much paint apps, just kind of got a silver thing on the back and kind of shiny and nice looking. But the face, oh man, so much details on that face. I love it. And the quality of it, kind of cool. I mean, the head's kind of rubbery, and I'll say assembling it, the hind legs were kind of stiffer to pop in, but it's not too bad. It was all pretty easy to assemble. Torso's pretty hollow plastic, if you can hear that. But overall, I like the articulations. Take a look at him. So he's got a double ball joint head. Go pretty far down, pretty far up. Get a little bit side to side. That's nice. And of course, it goes all the way around. But on a bull terror dog thing, it doesn't really spin that way, anatomically speaking. And the jaw is articulated. Love little touches like that. The shoulders, if you can call them shoulders, are on hinge and swivels, and they could use like a bicep cup, but I guess Hasbro didn't need that. They got this little swivel at the elbow. If it's an elbow, it's kind of, yeah, I guess they call it elbow. We'll just call it elbow. Then finally, they got a hinge and swivel at the wrist ankle in the front here. It's very nice. On the back, hind legs just feel like they kind of swivel. I wish they had like the hinges like the front legs did. That'd be nice. And then we got nothing at this backwards knee, which is very disappointing, Hasbro. I mean, what gives right there? But we get like this ball joint at the upper ankle and lower ankle. I guess that makes up for it because it's still got 3 points, really. And then the tail's like rubbery, but, you know, no articulation there. Overall, he's a pretty nice little figure. Let's stand him next to the Ghostbusters now. Looks like he's in pretty good scale, I'd say, but he's a lot bigger than any dog I've ever seen, so I don't know how Louis Tully made that mistake in the movie. Anyways, moving on to the other accessories. Now, Gozer's lightning hands at first I thought were just like, you know, purple lightning effect, you go on the hands, but nope, they are actually alternate hands without the hinges Gozer normally has, which is probably a good thing because that'll help her support the lightning. And yep, hands just pop out pretty easily. Well, it's the right hand. One of the left hand right here. Pop that on, get the next one off. Now you gotta ask yourselves, friends, are you a god? Wow, these look pretty cool, actually. I got no real issues with them. They look great. Pop on nice. I mean, I think the lightning has to be a lot farther given how far Gozer was away from the Ghostbusters in the movie, but I mean, Hasbro couldn't do much more than this. This is really cool. Next up, as the coolest Ghostbuster, Venkman, of course, gets what is the coolest accessory, the Ghost Trap. Now, sculpt on this is pretty good. They got all the little details accurate to the movie, but for some reason, it's all hollow underneath. I mean, they got like little wheels there. I guess maybe it's to be lightweight so it can like roll, but I mean, it doesn't roll even though it's got the sculpted wheels. It's missing some paint apps. I think that's supposed to be black. This little thing's supposed to be yellow, and this is supposed to be black, but nobody cares about that. This up here is supposed to be silver, and they got a little light for when the trap's got something in it, and that blinks red, and I guess it should be red. I never really saw it when it wasn't blinking. I don't know if it's black when it's not blinking, but theoretically it should be red if it blinks red, right? I don't know. But one thing that's really missing that bothers me is like the wire that's always attached to it as far as I know, but whatever. And it's also weird that Venkman comes with it when Ray was the one who was always holding it. But whatever, I guess Ray came with the goggles. They had to give Venkman something, and yeah, let's see, can't really fit. There we go. Gotta squish it in to his hand, and looks fine there. Let's squish it to his other hand. Even though they're both trigger fingers, they both hold the trap just fine. I got no complaints, really. Except maybe I should have a spot to hang it onto his belt or hook it somewhere. I mean, that would have been pretty cool, Hasbro. I mean, almost just barely fit it over this walkie-talkie thing. Whatever, it's still good as is. So instead of the trap, the coolest piece of equipment the Ghostbusters ever used, Ray comes with these ecto goggles, and yeah, I mean, they're pretty plain looking. They're this olive drab green color, and that's the color they mostly are in the movie, but on the top here, they just put silver on there, and there's supposed to be some black and then like a silver eyepiece, and definitely the lenses are supposed to be black. I mean, these are like goggles you're supposed to see out of. You can't see out of them if you painted the front of them silver, Hasbro, but whatever, tiny little details like that. Let's get them on Ray's head, and I guess you just kind of stretch the plastic loop around. Kind of tough since his hair is so poofy, and of course it's not flexible like real life hair. You just gotta squish it inch by inch. Actually looks pretty good, just like that. Like, you know, like he just lifted him up off his face. But let's get him all the way on. Alright, there is Ray with his ecto goggles. I don't think he's ever going to wear them like this again. I'm just going to put them on the top of his head or something for the rest of this review. And actually, friends, unlike Venkman, Ray does have a little loop there to keep the goggles on his belt. That's a nice addition. I'm going to put him back on his head because it's a lot more secure. Egon at least comes with an accessory that makes sense for him, a little PKE meter. Hasbro sculpted it nice and accurate to the film. The only paint they could apply is a little bit of green to the screen there. I mean, all the little lights that light up are just left unpainted, but at least they're sculpted there. The lights on the wings and the face up here. And cool enough, it comes with a little peg you can put onto Egon's belt. And it can just rest there. I don't know why the wings are extended when it's, you know, not in use, but that's still a nice little effort. Well, let's get it in his hand. That peg kind of makes it harder to put in his hand. I gotta rotate it a bit, and yeah, that looks nice. Looks a little small, but good job, Hasbro. Now, Winston, luckily enough, gets the cream of the crop when it comes to accessories, because he actually gets a proton stream beam effect for his proton pack that none of the other Ghostbusters do, which is pretty disappointing when you think about it, because it's like, really? All the Ghostbusters should have come with this, but it's got this orange plastic rod in the middle, and then this rubbery lightning effect that goes around it, and then it's, I guess, glued in there or shoved in really tightly to the rubbery blue part that pegs on top of the proton pack. And I think it would have been cool to get like a bendy wire so we could actually like pose it instead, but I think they did this for like stability's sake, and man, is it stable on there. But before we get on there, let's actually look at each Ghostbusters proton pack. Now, they are mostly the same, but Winston here comes with one that's labeled A1 for some reason there. Egon gets one labeled B2. Ray has A2. And Venkman A1, same as Winston. However, I do notice a difference, but like Winston and Venkman actually have a difference too. So Ghostbusters proton packs are mostly the same, except if you notice in Venkman, they'll have these 4 circles down here, and these were blinking lights in the movie. Venkman's has the upper right one lit up, and Winston's, even though it's also labeled A1, don't die on me, Winston, has the lower right one lit up. Egon gets the upper left one lit up, and Ray the lower left one. So 4 Ghostbusters, 4 lights. Hasbro was just like, well, you know, each one gets their own light, which is, you know, kind of odd because I don't think anybody would have really cared, Hasbro. But let's get these guys in their proton packs already, right? So each Ghostbuster has a peg hole in the back, and these proton packs all have little pegs in there. And at first you're looking at these things thinking, well, how am I going to slide the arms through these hoops? Nothing comes apart, but then you realize, aha, it does. Right here, this peels open. It's pegged in there kind of tightly. And there's another peg over here, but that doesn't open. It's just kind of sculpted to match both sides, I guess. And then you can slide one Ghostbuster arm through there and the head through the 2 little straps. Get this guy wrapped around and plug it back in place. Get that peg plugged into the back. And voila! A Ghostbuster in their proton pack. They can all stand up pretty fine wearing them. And the wands even clip onto the sides there. They got a little hole in them right there, and you can store them on the pack when you want them to not be in use. Getting them into the hands was a little tough. Like, basically, you just gotta wrap a hand around the cord and then shove this part in there. And same for the end of the wand. You gotta wrap the hand around the part where the proton stream comes out and then just shove it onto the jagged part where the fingers are meant to go, and then he's holding it. Not too bad. Turning everybody around now, we can look at the details on the proton pack. You see everybody just gets like one red dot, and they're all in different positions for some reason. And the details on these are pretty good in terms of sculpt. If we pull up Venkman here and look closer at the paint job, we can see it's got some good details, but also a lot of things missing. For example, this little round thing with the knob up here, is it called the crank generator? And it should actually be a gray piece. And then down below it, there's this really thin rectangle, and it should be a lot taller, and it's supposed to be like a sticker with a warning print on it, but, you know, they couldn't get the words that little on the figure. I get that. Over here, the iron arm's colored silver like it should be, but there's also be some black and copper colored pieces. This little antenna they sculpted down here out of, you know, flexible rubbery material should also be copper colored, but it isn't. But, you know, no one cares about those details. Over here, these 2 little wires coming out of this PPD, whatever that is, the rectangle piece over here, they're the ones that are supposed to be red, and then this one going from here to the top is supposed to be black, but Hasbro switched them around. This wire is blue, they got that right. This little part right here is silver, they got that. This rectangle right here is called the power cell. It should be blue, but it isn't. But I mean, maybe the proton pack's just out of power right now. The shock mount here is silver, like it's supposed to be. This wire right here should be red, but it isn't. This blue thing is supposed to be a sticker, supposed to be writing, but obviously Hasbro couldn't do with all that. There should be a white warning sticker right here and a red one right here, but they're missing. The cyclotron, which is what this whole circular thing is, only has one light lit up, but that's fine, we discussed that earlier. Worst offender's got to be the ribbon cable up here, which is just gray, whereas in the movie it was like, red, blue, yellow, green, had all kinds of rainbowy colors in it. The wand itself is supposed to have a little blue wire that goes around this part and a red wire at the actual tip, but they are just missing, although they would have been really small at this scale, so it's understandable. This cylinder is supposed to be silver, and it isn't. Overall, an extremely accurate sculpt on the proton packs. They are missing a lot of paint details, but they're all reasonable sacrifices for this price point, I would say. And before we move on from those proton packs, Winston's stream just attaches there. You squish the rubber on top of the wand, and, yeah. Looks pretty good. I like it. So considering the fact that every Ghostbuster basically gets 2 accessories, Gozer has extra hands, and everybody comes with a piece to make this guy, Dana is really looking like the weak link in this wave in terms of accessories, but I don't really know what more she could have come with, so I mean, overall the accessories are good. I just feel like she's definitely the weakest link in the wave. Scale and comparison time, friends. Each of the Ghostbusters pretty much have the same height, just a hair under 6 inches tall, or 14.5 centimeters. Even Egon, who should be the tallest, but it seems like they just rely on his poofy hair to give him a little inch over the other Ghostbusters. Winston's also just under 6 inches. The shortest is gonna be Ray, who's more like 5 3/4 inches because he's got that slightly different torso mold. Dana seems to be the tallest at just over 6 inches, or 15.5 centimeters tall. Gozer looks like she's the shortest at just above 5.5 inches, or 14 centimeters. Tallest Vince Clortho stands is about 5 inches, or 13.5 centimeters tall. Lengthwise, he is about 6 inches from his snout to his tail. As always, here's everyone next to my Batman and Spider-Man, and these guys are just a little too short to fit in with your Marvel Legends figures, unfortunately. They do fit pretty well with this Diamond Select Slimer I got, though. And they fit really well with the Mattel classic Ghostbusters figures. I mean, we've got the Hasbro Plasma series on the left and Mattel on the right, and they are pretty much the same exact heights. Here are the two Venkmans next to each other, and Hasbro's might be like a teeny bit bigger, but it's not by much. And then comparing the head sculpts of each figure, I think we can see that while Mattel's head sculpts weren't terrible or anything, Hasbro's come a long way in terms of actor likeness and just that 3D printing technology with the face paint, and it looks so good on there. And then Mattel's look kind of cartoony and stylized by comparison, I think. Although I will say that Winston head sculpt is pretty darn good on Mattel's. What gives, Hasbro? That should be much better. So in terms of the sculpt, I'd say Hasbro's definitely got one up on Mattel. They even got those pockets down by the belt on the front that Mattel totally missed. But when we start looking at the paint, I mean, Mattel does have a few advantages. Firstly, they got their zippers painted silver, unlike Hasbro. And then if you look at the side of the arms right here, I mean, that ghost logo looks a lot sharper on the Mattel version, doesn't it? And then coming around the back, first thing I noticed is those shoulder pads are actually gray like they're supposed to be, unlike the Hasbro ones that got them black for some reason. And then on the Proton Pack, that ribbon cable is actually rainbow colored on Mattel. And the Proton Pack just has a few more details here and there that Hasbro kind of missed. And I mean, yes, Hasbro has some details that Mattel didn't have, but overall, I think Mattel did pretty good on the paint. So I mean, what gives, Hasbro? Now, Mattel did try to do the wires on the ends of the wands for the Proton Packs, but they are kind of big and out of scale, and Hasbro ultimately probably made the right decision in leaving them off. However, that is a more accurate thing on the Mattel figures, but Hasbro got it more accurate by painting the P tubes the correct color there. They're yellow. I mean, Mattel just left theirs clear for some reason. And last thing I really noticed with the paint, friends, is that the Mattel figures are just darker on the jumpsuits overall, and I feel like this is something the Hasbro figures could really use, because they are just plain white by comparison. They could really use a wash to give them that more realistic feel. Not that the Mattel figures feel more realistic with those cartoonish head sculpts, but I mean, the jumpsuits look a little more realistic with that color tone, at least. So should you get these new Ghostbusters figures from Hasbro's Plasma Collection, friends? Well, if you don't have any Diamond Select or Mattel Ghostbusters figures laying around, then definitely, yes! But if you do have those, I might actually pass them up, because are they better than the Mattel figures? Yes, but not by that much. I mean, they're not quite up to the same high standards Hasbro is setting with their Lightning collection for Power Rangers. The head sculpts are way better than Mattel ever had. In fact, I think the Egon head sculpt's probably my favorite in terms of actor likeness, and they got way better articulation than Mattel figures. but the paint is arguably a bit worse. In fact, on Gozer especially, she's got probably the worst paint out of all the figures. But the weakest figure in the wave is definitely Dana, because she just has the weakest articulation and pretty much comes with no accessories except the Build-A-Figure piece, which is pretty cool, mind you. But if you were looking for some figures to fit in with your Marvel Legends, I'd keep looking, friends, because these are just a little too small. Basically, I wish they were a bit bigger. I wish they had a bit darker color scheme on their suits, and I wish everyone came with proton streams, but at the end of the day, these are ultimately pretty good figures, so I would get them if you want them. And until next time, peace out, YouTube!